Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Brittany Bodane, and I'm a member of our support team as well as our webinar coordinator. I'm excited to be here today to show you how to elevate your workflows with Grapher's automation. Writing a script can seem daunting if you're new to writing code, so today we'll review the basics to help you get started using pre-written sample scripts in Grapher's Script Recorder. After the discussion of each topic, I will stop for a few minutes to answer any questions. You can send your questions to Katie, the webinar host, via the questions box at any time. The questions box is on the webinar control panel underneath the audio section. Type in your question and it will be sent to Katie, who will either answer it or forward it to me. Please feel free to send in all questions. If we don't have time to answer them during the webinar, we will answer them via email once the webinar is complete. This webinar is also being recorded. Later this week, we'll post the recording along with the data used in the webinar. We'll send all of you a link when it's posted so you can test out the examples yourself. So today we will specifically be covering an intro to scripting, where to find sample scripts, how to edit sample scripts to meet your needs, how to use Grapher's Script Recorder, scripting with a template, and troubleshooting basics. So let's just get started with our little intro to scripting. Grapher operations can be controlled through automation scripts. You can do almost everything with the script that you can do manually with the mouse or from the keyboard. Scripts are used to automate repetitive tasks or consolidate a complicated sequence of steps. Golden Software uses a Visual Basic-like programming language. The first thing we need to know before working with scripts is the basic structure. Grapher scripts are made up primarily of declarations, assignments, variables, objects, methods, and properties. Declarations are used to define variables and their data type. For example, dim Grapher app as object defines the Grapher application as an object variable in the script. Assignments are used to assign an action or command to a declared variable. For example, set Grapher app equal to create object Grapher application creates a new instance of the Grapher application object declared above. Variables are used to store data in memory and name the memory location. For example, the statement file path equals C users, Brittany documents, test files defines this location on the computer to the variable file path. Now I can use file path as a variable in the script instead of typing the full file path in quotes each time it's needed. And we'll take a look at using variables later too, to make that make a little bit more sense for us. Objects, methods, and properties are defined by Grapher's automation library. Objects are something you would see listed in the Object Manager when working directly in Grapher, such as an axis, bar chart, or legend. The Grapher application, plot window, worksheet, and other high-level documents are also objects. Many objects are grouped into collections of related objects such as documents, shapes, windows, and so on. Properties are attributes you would find in the Property Manager when working directly in Grapher, such as columns plotted, tick mark spacing, or line style. Available properties will vary depending on the object they are being applied to, just as they do in the user interface. In addition to having properties, many automation objects perform services. A document object, for example, performs the save as service when a script instructs it to do so. The services that an object performs are called its methods. Methods often require parameters to control how their services are performed. The document object save as method, for example, accepts two parameters, a file name and a file format code. A basic script will include a declaration for each high-level object required, and then additional lines of code that use assignments, methods, or properties to perform an action or change attributes of the object. For example, this script illustrates how each of these items come together in a script. the first line of code, we use a declaration statement to define the variable Grapher app as an object. Next, we assign a new instance of the Grapher application to the Grapher app as an object. Finally, we use the property visible to make the Grapher app object and application visible, which means Grapher will open and you can see the script create all of the objects as it runs. This will all start to make a little bit more sense as we get a little further along and look at a couple scripts, but I wanted to check in and see if we had any questions so far. Okay, perfect. Everyone's with me, so we'll keep moving. Scripture can be opened just like any other application. As it is open now as its own app, we can see here it's packaged together with Grapher. We can also open Scripter and use it inside of Grapher by clicking Automation, Script Manager, View Script Manager. Now you might notice that this script manager right now is looking a little bit different than my other script manager. And that's just because I have edited the way this one looks a little bit to my preferred. So let's make my script manager in Grapher look the same as this one. So right-clicking in the white space gives us quite a few options. Under View, I can toggle Always Split. And that makes it look like the other one. It opens up what is called the immediate window. The immediate window is used to execute one-line instructions immediately. When you type an instruction into this window and press Enter, Scripter carries out the instruction. In addition to being a scratch area for evaluating language statements, the immediate window shows debugging information, which we'll talk about at the end of the webinar. Below the immediate window is the code window. You can type code directly into this window by typing, or you can open a saved script and see the code displayed in this window. You can also paste a script into this window. You can have multiple scripts open at a time. Each script will just be listed over on the left side. So let's take a look at where we can find sample scripts. The first place we can look to find sample scripts is actually in the samples folder. The samples folder is also packaged with Grapher. It contains sample data, sample projects, sample templates, and of course, sample scripts. So let's take a look at some of these now. To open in the script manager, we'll use its open button. And we can find the samples by navigating to our C drive, Program Files, Golden Software, Grapher 15, Samples, and this is normally where you'd see the projects and the data files, but since we're looking for only a WinRAP basic file right now, we only see the option for this folder. And here are all of our scripts. So as you can see, we have quite a few. There's at least one script in here for each plot type, but then we also see more specialized scripts. We have this one that's talking about fit curve properties. We have some that show a loop, which is something that's a little bit more advanced than what we'll cover today. But if you're interested in those, there are some good examples in here. We have some for the axes properties. This is a really good resource. You can probably find pretty much anything you're looking for in these sample scripts, including information on how to use automation with the worksheet. So for right now, we're going to look at this bar chart multicolor, and I'll click Open. And the script opens just like that. All parts of this are customizable. I like to have a lot of working space, so I slide this over. We'll take a look at actually using this script in a couple minutes, but first we'll go through other places to find our sample scripts. So the next place you would look for a sample script would be our support portal. You can find our support portal by navigating to goldensoftware.com and clicking support, or just go to support.goldensoftware.com directly. And I'm sorry, we would be here is what we want to be looking at. That will take you to this page. And you can type directly into the search bar, or you can click on the product of interest and browse that way. We have a couple sections here. The Grapher automation section is, of course, going to have all the information about automation, including this webinar later today or tomorrow. So we have even more sample scripts here. This goes on to a third page. In the help, you can find a lot of the scripts that are located in the samples folder. So sometimes coming straight to the support portal can give you the best of both worlds, but not all of them are in here. So it can be good to look at both. One other difference, you'll find a lot more interesting use cases or more specific use cases in the online help. A lot of these were written after users asked us questions, and we helped them by writing a script, and we figured we should post it. So you might find some more particular scripts on the online help. So let's take a look at one now. They'll all look like this when you click the link. We give you some instructions on how you can use the script. So the first option is to click that link and download it. You can do this and save the script if you're going to use it often. The other option is to copy and paste the script from down here. We give you both options. I think you could see why you might want to save the script. One reason you might prefer to just copy the script is if you only want part of it. This script is a good example of a script that you might not want the entire thing. Here we can see it's an entire script. We've got the submain start, end sub. We're creating the Grapher app object. We're assigning it to the application and opening it. But really all this script does is rename one item in the plot in the object manager, one plot item in the object manager. So if you really were just trying to do that, it would probably be faster to do it through the user interface than use this script. So this is a good example of something you might just copy and paste this or some of these if you hadn't had this in your script already. But for right now, we'll take a look at copying and pasting the entire script. So I just pressed Control-C on my keyboard. Now that we're back looking at Grapher, we can open a new script using the New Script button on the top left of the Script Manager window. Scripter always opens with submain and end sub. Any script you write is going to start and end with these, so just populates those for us. Our sample script has that already, so I'll delete them. And I press Control-V on my keyboard to paste it. Now, as you can see, it pastes in really nicely. All the formatting is still there. We didn't have to redo our spacing or anything like that. So another good place to look for sample scripts is in Grapher's help. And you can access Grapher's help directly from within the app, or you can access it online at grapherhelp.goldensoftware.com. In the Grapher automation section, you can expand scripter, and we have a ton of information in here. Right now, we're just looking at the writing scripts page as a good example, but here you can see we have an example of a script. Grapher's help is also where you'll turn if you have questions about specific syntax. You can look up your object, and if we just click a random one here, we can see a lot of information about using this, including this script, which demonstrates exactly how. The help will also have snippets. So it's a good resource for pointing you in the right direction. Not as great of a resource for finding an entire sample script, but you still might find what you're looking for in Grapher's help. And the last place we'll talk about to get sample scripts today might seem a little bit counterintuitive, but it is actually to create your own using Grapher's script recorder. Grapher's script recorder will record each click you're making through the user interface and print the code required to do that in the script manager. It can be a really handy tool if you are looking for a certain object and you're really not sure where to start even looking for that object's name. You can come over to the script recorder and do what you're doing in the user interface and see all of the appropriate names that you can use to search in the help to get you a little bit further along. Another good use for the script recorder, if you make the same graph every day, you can just record it once with the script recorder and then just run the script recorder and have it point to your new data file each time. So the script recorder can be a really nice resource. We can use the script recorder by clicking the Automation tab. In the Scripts section, click Record. As we can see, Grapher made a new script for us, and it already filled in everything that we need to get where we are with this empty plot. So we can just start making a graph as normal. I'll click Basic on the Home tab, and we'll just make a nice line scatter plot. So you can see with all of the clicks that I made, it really only filled in some code once we made the graph. But here we can see we created the line plot. This is where Grapher is showing where my data file is. The script recorder, one thing to keep in mind, it will show you all of the lines of code, and sometimes you don't need all of the lines of code. For example, if you're going to be working with a default that Grapher already does, such as Grapher automatically is going to set your axes to automatically use the data limits. If you want Grapher to do that, you don't need to write that in your code. It assumes you want that already. So just another tip here. It's not showing that right now, but a good example of this is, let me move our plot over so we can see it. If I change the graph title, all I'm doing is changing this text here. And really all we need to change this text is this depth over time. But Grapher's also showing us all of the other code. So if I did want to see how to set my pattern away from none, all I would need to do here is remove the word none and change it to the name of one of these. So I could type in crosshatch. So it's just helping you learn, but do note that you might not need every single thing it puts in the script recorder for your script. So let's take a look at another example of editing something in our graph and watching it record for us. Date time can be something that you're very particular about and you need to switch every time, so we can take a look at how it can help with that. Selected my x-axis, and on the labels page, next to major label date time format, I'll click select, and I want to see my month and the year only. So I'll click OK. And then again, we can see it took me a couple clicks to get there, but it's actually just this one line of code. You can pause the script while you're recording, which will allow you to click around and make changes, and Grapher won't record them. And then, of course, when you're done, you can click Stop Recording. Grapher will prompt you to save the script. You don't need to save the script, but if you'd like to, you could go ahead and do that now. If not, just click Cancel, and nothing will happen to the script. It stays over here. And that's it. That's as easy as it is to use the script recorder. So next we're going to talk about how we can edit these sample scripts. But before we do that, do we have any questions about anything we've seen so far today? All right, we have one question. If the data file changes the location each time you plot, for example, if we were to record a graph we make every day, but we're going to be making it with different data, can you leave the file path blank in some way so Grapher cues the user to select the worksheet in the middle of the script? Yes, you can prompt the user for a dialog box. And we will actually look at a script that contains a line to do so. We won't really talk about how to write that example, a little more advanced for today, but I will show you a good script that gives you an example of that so you can start playing around with that on your own. That'll be during our template section coming up. Okay, and that was our only question, so thank you. Please send in any that come up. Let's talk about editing our sample scripts. So for this example, we'll go back to our bar chart script. And this is our sample script that we just opened from the samples folder. We haven't made any changes to this script, but I'm just going to play it and let's see what happens. So Grapher is giving us an error here. And I can tell that because it's bright red. We can see this little arrow on the side. It's not telling us what's wrong immediately, but one good place to look for information on exactly what the error is the status bar in the bottom left corner. And it says, unable to open our data file, verify file name and path are correct. So let's go ahead and do that now. I'm going to click stop on my script, or end here. And then I'll just use the standard open. And we'll go back to our samples folder here. You can see where that is one more time. And these would be the sample data and files I was talking about earlier. So we'll open this. And it is in the location it prescribed to be, but let's press play again and see if Grapher just needed a refresher on where it was. And perfect, it says running our scripts now. Awesome. So now we ran through, and this script runs quite nicely just using the sample data without having to change anything. So let's update this to point at our data file because you will likely not really want to use the sample data file. You'll want to find a sample script and plug in your own data. So as we saw before, this is the line that is opening our data file. So this will be the line that we need to edit to point to our own data file. You might remember from the beginning of the webinar that Grapher app is a variable. This variable and path are telling Grapher to open up, to look in the file, sorry, it's telling Grapher to look for our file in the samples directory is what these two together are telling us. So it's saying, open it up, go to the samples directory and open this data file. My data isn't in the samples file and yours likely won't be either. So typically one of the first things you'll do is delete out this Grapher app.path plus portion. And then in this portion, since we don't have those variables, we need to put our entire file path for our data file, including the data file extension. It's very important to add that on as well. So I'll just go ahead and delete this. And my data file is here. So you can see now it's going to my C drive all the way, all the folders and directories to drill down to my data file. Now that I've added it, I'm going to look through the sample script a little bit more since these are written to help show you options you have. Some of these options might not be things you want. For example, these lines turn the axis titles off. Having axis titles is a default, so we could delete these, and that'll allow Grapher to auto add the axis titles. I know I'm going to want different titles than the auto axis titles, so I will actually leave these here, but instead of having nothing between the quotes, I'll add what I want the axis to say. Just do, for example, might type something in like that. And the next thing I'm noticing underneath here is we have the Grapher axis item auto max equals false. And that means that we're going to tell Grapher not to use the auto axis function, which will just use the max of your data like I was talking about before. Instead, for this particular data set, it wants the max to be 10.5. Since we, for our purposes, just want Grapher to use the defaults, we can just delete these lines out. So let's try running our script one more time. Awesome. So it worked with our data. It replaced our axis titles here. And now that I'm looking at it, I'm pretty pleased, but I also want to change my graph title away from graph 1. This script doesn't currently have a line in it that tells Grapher that we want a title and not the default title. But as you might remember, we changed our graph title in our macro we recorded earlier. So we can take a look at copying and pasting the line needed to change our title to our sample file. So we can see here, I didn't mention earlier, these green lines, these are important for you as the user. These are comments. A comment starts the line with an apostrophe, and you'll see them always denoted in green. These are ignored in the script, and they're really just there for you to write in plain English what you're expecting the next line or several lines to do. These can be really handy if you're sharing a script with your coworker. You can write each other little notes in there if you need to. Really just anything you want to use those for, they're really handy. So here we can see set math text properties, and then underneath graph1.title.text depth over time. That was our title, so this is going to be the line that I need. And as I mentioned earlier, the macro gave us all of this information. Right now I'm fine with my graph title staying in the default settings, so I'm only going to copy this line. We'll go back to our script, and I'm going to paste this in here. And the order of scripts does matter to a point. For this one, it's pretty straightforward. We can't change the title of the graph if it hasn't been created yet. So we just need to put this line anywhere after the graph has been created. Just like when you're working in the user interface, you can change the graph title at any time you wish after it's been created. So I'll just go ahead and put it in the end here. So I just pressed Control V, and then to stick with our theme here, I'll do an apostrophe and add a comment. And then we can change what we want our title to be. So a good idea when you are pasting in lines is to make sure that the objects have been assigned the same way as your current script. So this is a good example. If you notice, our new line says graph1.title.text. If we look at everything else in our script here, just above, we just see graph.axes.item. And so I'm right away noticing that those don't match. And then especially up here when we're actually setting graph, it's really a giveaway that I'm going to need this to just say graph and not graph one. But let's take a look at what it looks like before, just to be sure. So I pressed start, and Grapher didn't even bother to start running the script. It knows right away that this is not going to be correct. You can notice I don't have to press end here, so it just already is saying, nope, you're going to have to change that. In our status bar, we can see it says expecting a valid data type. So here we can go with deleting the 1. As soon as we start to edit, the red text disappears. That doesn't mean you've fixed the issue. It will always disappear when you start editing. So now let's press play again and try it out. And this time Grapher is starting to run our script, so it's a great sign that we have resolved the issue. Perfect. So the script is done running, and there isn't a status bar or anything for the script manager for you to know when it's done. So a good indication of this is 1, of course, our graph is created and it looks how we expected it to. 2, the end button is disabled and we can press start or resume. So that's going to mean our script ran without hitting an error and it is completed. So our next example, we'll take a look at working with templates. And this will be the example where you can see how to prompt the user for the dialog box for those who were wondering about that earlier. So we'll open up a new script from the samples folder using the open button. And this time we're going to look at the print with dialog script. So this script looks a little bit different. You see a lot more going on with the columns, or the comments, excuse me. At the top here, we can see the title of our script. We have an explanation of what it'll do. It will print multiple graphs using a graph template and several data files. This script can print multiple graphs because it has a loop in it. So if you are curious about looping, this is a good example where you can find how to write one of those. Again, a little bit advanced for today, but if you are wondering about that, you might check out the print with dialog script in the samples folder. Next, we see this comment, which is very important. This script will continue to loop over and over and over until we press cancel in the open dialog. And then this one also tells us what we need to modify to get this script to work with our data. So it says to modify paths in the script. So we can scroll down, and here this user-defined variables area is a dead giveaway of what we need to change. So we talked about variables earlier, so now we'll look at creating our own. We can make this whatever we want. It doesn't even need to have the money sign on the end or anything. It just needs to be a variable that's not already in use for another object or variable. So here we can just type in, we have inPath equals grapher path, which we discussed is a variable we don't need. So I can delete that. And now I can enter in my file path. I'm going to delete everything except for this last backslash. I do need that. If you're not going to point to the entire data file, like we were doing before, where we had the file extension on the end, then you need a backslash at the end of where the file path is. And that's because that backslash differentiates between folders and when a data file is occurring. And the extension on the data file is what tells Grapher that you are indeed asking for a data file and not just asking it to go into another folder. So our data is located here, and my template's in the same place. So I will just copy this entire thing and paste it in here. So now instead of putting all of this in the script as we were doing before, we'll just see in path and template path. So we can scroll down and see if we need to change anything else. And since we haven't told Grapher what the template we need is, we will need to specify that in the script. Here we can see documents add template path, which is our variable, plus. So here is where I need to update my template name. I'll leave the .grt because that's the file extension for a template, and I'll type in the name of my template. So now let's press play and watch Grapher run through this loop with our template. So the first thing it gets to is line 28, get file path, and then in path. So it's telling Grapher to open the dialog box with get file path and point us directly to this Grapher automation folder, which Grapher has done. So now I can select my data file and click open. Grapher opened my template and used the data file. Now it's moved on to the print section. I'm not hooked up to a printer, so we can just name our PDF. This wait 5 seconds means literally wait 5 seconds. It doesn't say seconds, just 5. Waiting can be important to give Grapher enough time to complete the line above before it moves on to the next. We're not too debugging yet, but this could help you debug. Something that can happen if Grapher moves on a little bit too quickly, especially with saving or exporting, is if it moves on to the next line, it can disrupt the completion of the line before and result in a corrupted file. Corrupted files, one of the main causes of those is the end of the file missing due to the program closing or something happening during the save. Since the next line is to close the plot window, this is a pretty good area to give yourself some errors. So this wait 5 seconds is just a cushion for us to make sure nothing goes wrong. So we've moved past. Grapher was able to print. We waited. It closed the plot window, which is why we see our multicolor bar chart again. And it moved us back up to the open dialog box. So I'll select our next one and click open. We can watch it run through this again, see how it works with the same template and a new data file. Looks good. Now we're waiting again. Grapher closes the plot and it moves us back up. And since we don't have any more data files we're interested in, I can just click cancel and the script completes running. So a good example of using a template. It isn't any different than opening up another Grapher file such as a GRF or the GPJ. You just need to make sure you are also pointing Grapher to a data file to use with that template. And then again, great place to take a look at how to prompt a user for a dialog box and a good little example of how a loop works. Okay, and do we have any questions before we move on to our debugging section? Okay, we have one question. Is it possible to call Grapher scripts from within a script? This is possible with Visual Basic, but it is outside of the scope of our support. So it is definitely something you can do, but our technical support team might not be able to quite help you with that like we would with the Grapher basic like language, but it is definitely something you could do. All right, so if those are all our questions for now, we'll just cruise into our debugging section. So after you've found the right commands and set what you believe to be the proper syntax, you might find that the script isn't doing what you want, or it's issuing a warning message. Debugging is the process of removing these errors and making the script run in exactly the method you want. Debugging can be difficult, but there are many commands available that help with debugging scripts in Scripter. So we've looked at some mostly successful scripts. We've seen what it looks like when the script can't run and we get an error. We've seen how we can look in the status bar at what exactly that error is. But let's talk about a little bit of what to do if you have no idea what the error means. So one great place to look if you see an error that you don't know is on our support portal. We have this lovely Grapher automation errors knowledge base article. And these are the most common errors you'll see during scripting. So let's take a look at getting an error one more time here. We can go back to our bar chart script, and I can just go ahead and make a change in here I know won't run. I just deleted title out of this bottom line. So if we run this script, Grapher will make it all the way through until the very end where it says there's something wrong with this one. Our status bar says no such property or method. We can come back to our knowledge base article, and that's actually the first one here. So as you'd expect, since you just watched me make this script incorrect, this error is usually caused by a typo in one of the properties or methods in the line. So as we can see in this example, even as small as a typo as this says cell, and it should say cells, will throw this error. So when you get this, it's a good idea to make sure you didn't make a simple typo or to go check your syntax and make sure that it is correct. And as you can see, this article will walk you through your first step and your second step here to try and diagnose that issue. To edit the script, you do need to stop running. However, if you do try to start editing, Grapher will tell you you can't do that and ask if you'd like to. So you can just click yes, and then you see the yellow arrow goes away, and now we can edit our script to fix it. So sometimes when you're working on a script, your script just isn't giving you the results you expected. So we can take a look at an example for that. So we've run this script and it's looking good, but now that I'm looking at it again, I'm noticing it's actually not showing me all of my data. So I want to figure out why this isn't happening. And this script isn't very long, so I really could probably look at it and figure it out. But for the purposes of our example, let's take a look at some other tools available in the script manager for debugging. So one good place to start is by using the step commands. We can step into, step over. So if we click step into, our script will start running, and we can click step into, and Grapher will run the line that is selected. These first few lines don't cause anything for us to see, but line 17 does. We've created our plot, and we're starting to look for the data file. Grapher just needs to know what to do with it next. So we can click I accidentally exited there we go. Now we're back. Thought I clicked the wrong button there. So we've created our bar chart, and now we can step into again. And as I'm looking at this, I can start to see that this is where Grapher is being told to not plot all of my data. So from right here, I can tell I actually want, my data has 17 rows, and we're telling Grapher to only use 10. So I can stop running the script and I can fix that. And again, because using all of the data is a default, these lines can be deleted and Grapher will automatically graph all of my data. So stepping into is a good option for that. Another good option, when you find a step that's causing the unexpected result, you can stop the script and you can add a break to the script at this location. To add a break line, we can click Debug, Toggle Break, and then behind this little arrow, we can see a red circle. The other option, we can stop our script, is to click in the margin to add the break. So if I click right in this gray space, it'll add a break for us. Once the break is added, you can run the script up to this point and the script will stop at the break. You can then step line by line from here to the end of the script to just walk through and isolate that specific part so you can work on it. This is really nice to do for really long scripts. Again, this script is pretty short, so we probably wouldn't need to use a break. But just as your scripts start to get long and contain large workflows, it's a good tool to just isolate part of it and work on it. Once you are done with the breaks, you can right-click, debug, clear all breaks. One of the simplest debugging techniques is to insert instructions into your script to monitor the progress of the script and display the values of variables at various points throughout the script. The immediate pane, which we talked about in the beginning, is very useful for this. You can add debug.print statements while the script is running or after the script is complete, and these will print and the value you've asked in the immediate window. This is a good thing to do if you are working with loops. You can print your variables to the immediate window to check variable names. You can also use it to check your object names and make sure you're staying consistent throughout your script. Can help you catch your own user errors. So we can add a debug line into our script. So for our example, we can come over to our recorded macro. And let's say we want to see what the maximum value Grapher is using for our x-axis. Our x-axis has been defined as an object, so we can put this statement in anywhere after it's been defined. So I can just press enter here and type debug dot, and as soon as I do the dot, I get options for clear or print. If I press the P, I can just press tab and Grapher will fill it in, make it a little bit faster for me. And then after writing debug print, you enter what you want to see. So I want to see x-axis 1. I want to see its max. So x-axis 1 dot max. That's all we need to type in. And let's play this one more time. We'll see that max printed in the immediate window up by my cursor. So we can see the maximum of our x is 4200, which is the Julian value for our date. Okay, and that concludes my presentation of how to elevate your workflows with Grapher automation. I do want to open it up one more time for questions. We have one question, and it is, what exactly is the difference between the step into and step over buttons that you showed us? Good question. The step into command will execute the line that's highlighted, and the step over command will execute the next line. So it just kind of skips over it and executes the next line there. So both can kind of do the same thing for you, but either or. And do we have any more questions? I'm not seeing any right now, but do feel free to keep sending those in if you have those. And while you're sending those in, I just want to say thank you so much for joining the webinar today. I hope everyone gained some confidence in their scripting abilities. If you have any additional questions on what was covered today or anything else Grapher related now that the webinar is concluded, you can call our technical support line. Actually, in 7 minutes, we're not open yet. But you can call us in a few minutes and we'd be happy to help you. You can reach out to us via email at graphersupport@goldensoftware.com. Again, a recording of this webinar and the data used will be posted on our website later this week, and I will email each of you with a link when it's been posted. As always, thank you very much for your time, and I hope everyone enjoys the rest of your day.